So we're going to put a thin rubber sole protector on these. We're going to thin this out, sand down a little bit, and we're going to splice it in so that it sits flush everywhere that touches the ground. But we're using black because the shoe has a black edge. If we were to use a cream or a nude, we would have to paint the edge, which is going to be a pain. These are pretty much brand new, but we're going to water and stain protect them before. So that's another spray, and then we wait a few minutes. While you're waiting on one thing to dry, you get another thing started so you have a flow. Because if you were to do one job from start to finish with nothing in between, in that hour you could have got 3, 4, 5 other jobs done. We'll let those sit for a few minutes. And I can prep this over here. So now it's really thin and it'll splice in really nice. It's called a skive. So this next part's cool. I learned it from Bruce. Start with a fresh blade. So you go the affected area, see where everywhere is going to touch the ground. Like there. We're going to cut down, and as we get to this side, we're going to curve over and push, because if you were to cut all the way, you could cut that upper pretty good. And then we're going to do a little splice. So I'm going to create the matching skive to that piece we just cut. We're going to cut like this to create a little triangle. So now that's a little bite in there, and we're going to sand the rest of the sole. But now this will sit flush in there. Okay. Now we're going to sand the rest of this. Take another precaution and tape the edge of the shoe. You don't want to get any glue on that satin. You'll be sorry. Some people tape it before, but I like to see how thick the sole is so that I'm not going too far. Because if you sand too far down, it's not going to be even all the way around. That was like the perfect length. Just eyeballed that. And you got to use good blue tape. There's bad blue tape out there. You know when you go to paint a room and it just falls off? If you have that, the glue's going to seep underneath and ruin the shoe. You just have to buy the name brand like 3M or whatever. It's because if it doesn't stick, then you can't do that job, or you're taking a risk on that job, you know. And we're pushing it in, starting in the center, and you're kind of going to feather out. Because you don't want to push too hard. It's light coats. So we're even going to take some of this and put it on the other one. You have a little bit of leeway when it comes to leather and suede, but satin, especially a fluorescent pink satin, is so unforgiving. It's harder to fix your mess ups. The goal is to not make any mistakes, but... All right. So while we let that sit, we can heat the soles for these. It helps the material become more malleable, but it also reactivates the glue so that it'll fit on there a little bit better. Usually when I'm heating, I try not to do too much else, because if you forget, it can burn the material or it can ruin the glue, or if it gets too hot. If you have something you feel isn't going to work out, you have to explain that to the customer, whether it's your skills, but it's usually your confidence in the job. If something's not going to hold up or last a long time, you need to educate, because they may still want to go forward with it, knowing the risks. And if you lay the risks out, and they get a piece back that functions, then they're ecstatic. But if you lay the risk out and it doesn't work, then there's no real loss in the situation, because they don't have to pay you, but also they need to go buy a new pair of shoes. But as long as it's been explained. If I didn't explain that to people on projects and stuff, then I'd be on the hook. Sometimes you get caught holding the bag when something's not going to hold up, and you just have to stop and say, this isn't going to work. Because it was already broke when it came in here anyway, right? You want to stick your hand in and kind of flex it a little bit, because if you put it on curled, then the shoe's going to naturally want to curl at all times. So you'd rather it be straight. So this is going to help to press the two boards down. This material is really, it's oily, like I said. It's a little brittle, so we want to be careful, but you roll it and it just pushes this layer to that layer. And then we're going to trim it here, the excess, so then when we trim it on the machine, it's not wearing down the blades as quickly. And it's an older shoe, sentimental to the guy. It's still in really good shape, so there's no sense in not fixing it. But he wanted the Arctic grip, which is a good line from Vibram that you could walk up like a 45-degree block of ice and it won't slip, which is really good for if you've got older parents in New England, or this guy's going to Iceland, so that's a good reason to get it done. So we're going to get as close as we can without chopping into the welting, because if you cut into the shoe, you're a goofball. The thing that the guy that taught me used to say was, everything is repairable. It's just a matter of should it be, because it has to make economic sense for the customer and economic sense for my time. And we want it to come out good and what they expect. So we're going to do another trim anyway, just to get closer. That only gets so close the way the guard is. People like this. When I post videos on Instagram, it's all this. I could spend all day cutting together a shot of me doing a shoe from start to finish. But this one is the one people like the most. I don't know if it's satisfying or something. I'd say it's kind of satisfying. Because that's a little curved, I gotta use this one. Oh. Keeping things going is really good, but there's a lot of stuff from the 90s and early 2000s which is really back right now, like strong fashion back. You have to remember that a lot of that stuff was made at like peak everything's plastic time. Vinyl, polyurethane, pleather, Corinthian leather, it's all fake, it's plastic, and that deteriorates over time. And if the shoe still works and fits and has some leather on it or some rubber on it, then it's going to last you a long time. But that polyurethane has a shelf life, whether it's 5, 10, 15 years. It breaks down and you either have to replace it all or you need to throw it out and buy a new pair, because it wasn't made for longevity. A lot of stuff now isn't made for longevity. And the reason that people are so they want so badly the stuff that their grandfather had or of old is because it's not that it was made better because we've come up with more creative ways to build things and streamline things. It's that the materials were better because there wasn't really plastic. So plastic was such a new thing that they weren't like, let's put it on everybody's shoes. Let's make you wear plastic. Again, that I just have to loop back to, if you find something plastic and you like it and it's comfortable, or if it's what you want to wear fashionably, buy it. We can try to fix it. But you should just wear what you want to wear, you know? Life is too fleeting to really be concerned with quality other than your comfort and your safety and your health and your back and your spine. As long as like all your basic needs are met, wear what you want to wear and then we'll fix it. Or I'll throw it out for you. So, because this guy has a deadline and he wanted the Arctic grip, the size of his sole was back ordered through my supplier. And I had some pairs of the same compound, but in a different style, in a different size. So we have to do some creative problem solving. I don't typically do this, in that the right way is always to get the right size and put the right thing on there. But there's a deadline. He's going to Iceland. He's going to be climbing volcanoes or something. So we're gonna put a little bit of different style on there. It's gonna look good when it's all set. But this has to get sanded and primed. So we'll sand it, we'll prime it, and then we'll stitch these here so that the soles stay on while that primer cures. So they're all sanded. We broke the finish on there, the factory finish. This is the multitasking part, right? I need to stitch this, I have to prime this, and I have to put that other job together. If I wait too long to put that other job together, I'm going to need to re-glue it. So there's not enough time to stitch this before I got to put that together. So I'm going to prime this, put that together, stitch it, come back to this job, glue it. You have to, if you're doing more than one job at a time, you have to just like constantly be like order of operations, or else you're going to be re-gluing, which is time, materials, and you know. So this primer goes specifically with the glue that I have, and there's two kinds. There's like the softer kind, and then the more dense rubber and polyurethane. So you have to kind of know which materials you're working with, so you can use the right primer. But this one has to cure for 15 minutes, and then we need to glue it and let that sit for a few minutes. Everything's time. As they change the way that they like make products now and shoes and stuff, there's a lot more polyurethanes happening and plastics. And so, one, things don't last 20 years anymore, but they also take unique things to fix when they break, because the glue doesn't go, you know, not everything's compatible anymore, you know? So it's kind of, it's frustrating, but you got to know what. Somebody can't come in and go, oh, can you just glue it? You get that with a lot of the last generation because they're used to their things being leather or rubber, but their shoes are plastic and they don't know. It's kind of labeled when you buy it, but it's not really. So there's no quick jobs anymore. Unless it's like a stitch or a rivet. Glue is a one-day process at least, because even after you cure it, prime it, clean it, sand it, glue it, stitch it, there's a 24-hour wait time before this is fully cured and strong, unfortunately. And I pointed out, not that you need to know, she had worn them a couple times, so they did get a little dirty already. You can see that there, tiny spot. I'm going to try to brush it out, but with satin, if you brush too much, it gets like pilly, you know? It's a fabric. But this is a preventative piece because it wasn't a cheap shoe. It's also not an everyday shoe, but this is one, it's going to keep it from slipping, but it's also going to wear longer, because if you wear through that leather, you need to change the leather out, but if you wear through the rubber, you can just swap the rubber out again. You can use the tail to kind of push it and close the gap there. I don't know if this is called the tail of a hammer, but it's what it is in my brain. press it. This machine is the craziest because you have to press both down at the same time to do this, but sometimes the shoe moves. So it's weird. I'll show you. Switch it over. You would do this, but sometimes as it comes down, the shoe doesn't want to stay stable, or sometimes you're pressing something that is off balance. So I keep one hand here, I press one and I use my leg. I don't know if this is, anybody else does this, but it's that, you know. It's just a funny thing I noticed. The other ones always have one button. I guess it's a security measure to make sure your hands are clear. Would make sense. So see, we got a really clean skive there. That was there, don't blame me. But we got a really clean skive, which is great. I knew we would, but it's just gonna take a little bit of sanding at the end to like make it look neat. I think some people are gonna see this and be like, when I'm sanding, I get asked a lot, oh, why don't you wear gloves? You're not supposed to wear gloves on machinery like that, because if your hand gets sanded, you can pull away and feel really fast. But you can't typically feel, you can't feel a glove, that's why it's protective, but it could get sucked in. And this belt's 24 grit, so it'll rough you up. So I don't wear gloves when I do it. You shouldn't when you're operating heavy machinery. So anybody at home, just, you know, sometimes you chop a little bit of the black, but we just want a good scar. Careful, careful. That's the take. And this will help get that scuff out that was already there too. It's just to get a little bit of the excess glue off. There's not much. We can let those set for a few minutes while we stitch these. Because this isn't a dress shoe, we're not cutting a groove. We just want to make sure that the finished stitch holds, works, and stitches correctly. It's also a really old shoe, so some of the spots are pretty worn. It's a crazy creation the way they did it, but it might take me a few tries to get around some of the corners, only because it's kind of worn down in places, but it should take well. And when it stitches smooth, it's a good day, you know. The machine's great. It's all about how the shoes want to cooperate. What we can do? Toes and turns for me are always the hardest part. There's a mastery that comes with this machine that I'm still figuring it out. Like I said, a lot of things are made out of plastics now and less rubber, so you see this construction less. It's not indicative of quality, really, because you could have a crappy shoe that's welted. know I don't have much welting on the back there, so I'm going slow. Sometimes you can really rip through, you know, like just zoom. See how we did. Pretty good with how much we had. Like, there's not much leeway there. It looks like there's a lot, but the way that it's stitched goes through on the outside. It's like a chain stitch. But it came out good. It's gonna function. Hear my bells. Let's hope we're as lucky on this one. Go slower on the tower. Go. Much better. Good job. Sometimes it'll, if you don't have enough welting here, if you mess up a turn, it'll fall off the track and you'll get stitches on the outside. Sometimes, very rarely, but if you don't get a good bond on these two, the actual stitching machine will just go through the black part, like there'll be separation here and your guide underneath will be in between. Or sometimes you run out of bobbin in the middle of your stitch and you need to rethread it. Rewind your bobbin, which that's not a bad job, that's just it's a frustration, you know, because it kills your workflow and you have to stop what you're doing. But I've been lucky. The machine's very good. And like I said, this is more of a utilitarian boot. The bottom stitch is beautiful, but he's going to get good use. It's going to serve its purpose, and let's get things glued up over here. I can't reiterate enough. This isn't the normal way to do things. This is because we need to accommodate somebody with a timeline here. But we're putting almost a 3/4 sole, and then we're going to fill in the rest with something, and then we're going to put a block. You'll see. It's going to look good when it's done. But I feel really sketchy about doing it in the moment. I know it's going to function properly, but it's almost a 3/4 sole, which if somebody came in with a 3/4 sole as a shoe repairer, I'd be a little upset at the last guy. But that's just the situation we're in right now. And again, we push that glue in real good. Push, 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 push. This has been primed. I haven't seen it fall off. So to where I've always primed it because you can kind of get a feel for the material and that it needs to, because it's a compound. Who knows if it actually needs to be primed in this case? But better safe than sorry.
Have you ever had one slip off the floor and stick to the ground?
Oh, it's like dropping a piece of toast with butter on it. It sometimes happens. I don't get to it as often, but patchwork and like bags and stuff is obviously less physically demanding unless you're doing like a suitcase, which I don't love doing suitcases, but it's really the only time you get to sit down if you're working, because you can sit at the sewing machine, and like it's hard to find time to do that because you're like, I just want to get the hard jobs done. I really got to crank through this, and it can just be your break for the day is still working somehow, you know? I try to set aside a day a week, Saturdays, to do the bags or something, because it's hard to stop your flow, especially once you're in like physical mode, like you're talking about, and I don't know, it's hard to find time to do it all. You know, you can only do so many things a day. It's just me in here. If the way that I'm busy, people are like, oh, you should hire somebody or take somebody on, and it's like I can't take the time to train somebody at the moment. One, because I'm a new business and I'm trying to pay my bills, stuff. But also, like, anytime you're teaching somebody, I would love to teach somebody. I think more people should get into this business, but I think it's just like, at this point, I can't stop working to teach somebody and pay them on top of it, because I think unpaid internships are a bunch of baloney. I don't believe in them. But if anybody ever catches me on a slow season, they should come in, learn how to do the job. All right. Just need to do a little touch up on the edge of this just to make it look nicer. And I think I have time to rinse this brush off before we gotta put that together. Sometimes you forget and you put them on upside down, but you can't see where your margins are. So it can be like off center or look bad. So I like to do it here. Even there, touch it a little bit. Making sure there's no separation on the edges. Sometimes you can roll it, but this spring, a little goofed up. Trim the excess we can. It's not going to cut all the way through, but it gets us started. I'm just cutting the line that I already perforated there. Just it's less wear on the sanding belts to get all the excess off. Could you sand it all in there? Yeah, but the belts are hard to get. I actually had a hard time finding this belt. There's this company that makes them, but there's only like, that I know of, one company in the US, and it's like 3 inches wide by 65, it's a band, 65 inches. And I've been having a really hard time getting my hands on one. So I just got a new one, and I don't know when I'm going to be able to find more. I'm sure somebody in the industry knows where I could get some though. Because this is hard to reach, I'm going to use this one. One more thing. Creating a skive again like last time. Because we did the 3/4, we need that to lay flush there so that we can fill in the rest of the sole before we put the heel on. What we're gonna do is, I guess I'll explain before we get there. We're gonna put this on, and then up to this line I sanded, we're gonna use crepe, which is a soft foam, but not a polyurethane, to build the heel up. And then we're gonna top it with these here so that it's got a little bit of a heel block, but not too much. It wasn't really drastic before, but we gotta get some foam in there. If it was all this composition, it'd be too heavy and too bulky, so we want a lightweight, but also comfortable, because that's where, you know, when you're standing on your heels, if it's a softer rubber, it'll feel better. If it's too hard, it doesn't have a cushioning effect, and if it's too soft, it mushrooms out under the weight of you. It kind of wants to go horizontal, and you don't want that. So there's good foam for inside your shoes, there's good foam for outside your shoes, and then there's foam for direct contact with the floor, like Birkenstock. Imagine what a Birkenstock sole is. That's what this is. See all that dust. So let me put the heel thing on. There's only one heel thing.
There's only one.
Because there's no left and right, you know? There's different sizes, but you don't put both on. Somebody that wants to get shoes fixed or thinks they have a pair that could be fixed, it's like, in my case, patience for sure. But it's also, there has to be understanding, because when you ask a timeline or ask a price, I can put a price on my time, but you don't do it all at once because you break jobs in between. So it's like every job is different. This job is different than most of the other ones I do, even the other ones I would do at the same time. So it's, obviously I can name a price. We don't want sticker shock, and you want to know if your investment is going to be worth it for you. But it's super hard to guarantee how long something's going to take because of all the extra steps here. It's like I have to fit it in, and we have to time it right. I'd say all together I'll have worked 2.5 hours on this or so. But there was like breaks in between, so we broke it up between 4 hours or 5 hours. You know, like even I sanded the soles off before you were here, so that's more time too. It's just hard to explain exactly what I do here. Like if somebody was like, how do you re-sole a shoe? This is entirely different than another one, so there's many different ways. I'm happy to explain at the counter, but there's not one way to do things. And I like that. I like challenges, and I like doing a good job, and I also like over-delivering. Like if you're like, I'm either gonna throw this out or get it repaired, obviously I prefer you get it repaired, but I can also tell you to throw it out if that's what you really want to hear. You just have to be honest with people, and you need to know when something's not going to be worth it as a professional, because I could charge people $100 to do a job that I know is not going to hold up, but that's not giving value to somebody. And especially if somebody's coming to a shoe repair person for the first time, which a lot of our generation and the next generation is, they've never been to a cobbler before. You want to be told the truth. You don't want to be talked to like you're stupid. It's like talking to a contractor and they're rude, or they're like, I know how to do it, and they don't want to share their information. I want to share the information, because an informed customer makes better decisions when they're buying shoes and the way they wear these shoes and the preventative maintenance of the shoes. Because not only do I fix, like on those Jimmy Choos, we do preventative stuff that will make you so that your huge investment lasts a lot longer, because there's certain shoes that aren't cheap, you know, and it's not nothing's getting cheaper really. So it's about taking care of your stuff, and lotions, care products, polishes, like I have that, and I'll show you how to do it, because I want you to have your stuff for a long time and cherish your goods, so that when it comes time to repair things, you don't throw them away and you don't buy a new one, you get them fixed if they're in a position to be fixed. So that's where we're at. I just want people to It's about having an informed client, not a rich client. There's a middle ground there, you know? I don't want your money. I just want you to be happy, and I want to feel fulfilled at the end of the day. I think that's what I try to impress on people, because you see these guys like Beto's Leatherwork. He's one of the best repairers in the world. He's on YouTube. He's amazing. Steve, he does amazing shoes. But he's doing $500 repairs on a $1,000 shoe, which is amazing. He does better than factory, better than craftsman work. But I need people to know that your $50 shoe can be fixed as well, you know? And I don't want people to think my shoes weren't expensive, so I'm just gonna throw them out and get a new pair, because that's not a sustainable thought process for the world. If you only have $50 to buy a pair, it's understandable. Get what you like, get what feels comfortable, get what's fashionable, and get what you need at the moment, but try to save it. And if I can't save it, we say no, and then we can talk about getting you a new pair, right? I think that's how it should go. So we've got the foam block now, and we want to put a top lift on there. But when we put it on, you want the heel to land flush and the metatarsal head to hit flush. If it's too high or too low, it can create kind of like it'll be uneven. You'll see when I flip it over, the heel's going to be really off balance. But see how there's that huge gap up here? We want it to be almost flush, or like a quarter's worth of space in that very back. So what we're going to do is we're going to sand like the breast area here to kind of bring it down so that it lands a lot more flush. A little bit of a gap is okay because the foot rolls, but ideally you want to land on the metatarsal heads and the heel at the same time. So I'll be back in 2 seconds and we'll see the difference. Now we got top lift, in the heel there. And like I said, we're gonna have a little bit of a gap, but it's pretty balanced. He's landing on his metatarsal heads and on his heel here. So that'll be good. So now we get that glued up and then finish it all up. What I do is when I finish a job, I make a little tally. And then at the end of the day, if I have 10 tally marks at least, I feel really good. There's too many shoes in here for 10 to really be sustainable, because it feels like for every one pair I get done, like 2 or 3 come in. If I did things the way they came in, somebody would come in for heels or a stitch or something that's fairly simple. They shouldn't have to wait a month for that, because there's time in between jobs, like I said, where we're gluing something, we have to wait. Now is when I would do one of those more simple or straightforward jobs to kind of squeeze them in. So you could bring in something and it's easy, and you get it back in a couple of days, and somebody could bring in something at the same time and it's harder, and it takes a month at the moment for that to get turned around. And it's all about kind of triaging not priority, it's not even priority, it's just like, when can I fit this in? Because you have to do the hard jobs, you have to dedicate time to them. It's just the downtime when you can fit in the other jobs, and it's hard to grasp unless you really see it. And I think when people come in and see it and you explain it to them, they understand. So we'll clean that up, but that's kind of where we're at. We've got our heel, our block, and our sole that all has the Arctic grip material on there. It's kind of cool. It's definitely like a crazy way to do that, but I'm glad we figured it out. Now this guy can go to Iceland. They sell certain wheels with finer grits, but you can really smooth this out. Sometimes if you just do it on the belt, it's got like, you can't see it, but it's like got a ridge to it. And I just like to be able to like run your finger across it and it feels smooth, you know. And then we're going to condition it, clean it up a little bit, and that'll be that. Let it cure overnight, and then we'll ship it out to the guy. You know. Just looking for... I'm going to start this one with a tenderly. This is a really good product for like oil tan or matte finish. It'll give you like a nice matte finish on there, but it's a really good moisturizer. It's like a lotion. It's not petroleum like we were talking about. And it brings a lot of it back, but this is just a really old pair. I think he's had these since he was a kid. So we're just gonna get some of that on there and let it soak in. And then we'll top it with a wax, which usually if you don't want a high shine, you can put like a water-based conditioner on there and buff it out a tiny bit, and that's it. But I think getting a wax will give this person a little bit of a protection as well from the elements, from Bjork. You know how she gets. We could even leave it there, but I think a deep conditioner is definitely needed. I don't think it transfers over very well, but these boots were pretty dry. I'm sure they haven't been conditioned in quite a while. You can bring things by to a cobbler just to have them. Like, you could buy the stuff yourself. It's a labor of love if you want like a high shine or something like that. Like if you really want a pair for an interview, but I think just care. You can bring them to a cobbler. If you're going to go to a cobbler, whatever area you're in, just be patient with him. He's tired. He's working he's doing his best. He's in here on his day off. You know, he's doing a good job. Leave him alone. Laces. I think he included the old ones too, but it can't hurt to have extra. You could just put the old ones in your junk drawer. I don't usually tie them, but we're going to present it, right? So that's where we're at. You get the Arctic sole, proprietary material through Vibram, where you can walk on snow and ice. It's very good for grandma if she has to walk down her slick driveway. It's a great sole. It's long wearing and comfortable. This compound, nobody knows what it is, but it works amazing. We did a tiny heel block buildup there with the EVA crepe so that it's really comfortable. We stitched a new composition midsole, and there's new cork under there as well, so that'll slowly conform to his feet. We put a nice neutral conditioner on there to bring back a lot of the life, and some new laces. It's one of those things where not every job's super glamorous, but it's functional. We had to adapt to make it work, and that's what a lot of jobs in here are like, adapting to the circumstances you're in, because you wore your shoes. This could never be automated, right? A robot can't do this because you walk different than I walk, who walks different than that person walks. So wear patterns are different. Everybody wears to a different part of the sole, part of the shoe, angles and stuff like that. It's all relatively uniform, but you can't, I couldn't do this with my eyes closed because every part of the shoe is different than the last pair of boots I did. So I think they came out pretty cool. I hope they're happy with them and can take them to Iceland. That's where we're at. Yeah. And then we did these Jimmy Choos. Little taste of both worlds, right?